Hello, my loves. How are you? Okay, so I'm coming in a little late with the new moon in Scorpio readings, mostly because the energy was so perplexing for me and that I wanted to keep processing it to kind of understand more of what I was talking about with what I felt from this energy, that it had this hit and run quality to it. It was funny because I was saying this to someone on the phone. I was like, yeah, something about the energy is like hit and run, because it's about us really facing things that we would rather run from, but we actually made a hit. So we need to kind of stick around and work on this. And the person I was on the phone with was like, gosh, that makes me think of like getting hit by cars, because I always get other cars always hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. I've never, had anybody hit my car before, like ever. And I'm the best driver ever, so I don't hit anybody's car. I've never hit anybody's car. And after I got off the phone, I went for a hike, stopped at two places, came home. 24 hours later, I was outside by my car and I noticed that somebody had hit my car. So basically, like right after we had that talk, somebody hit my car. So at one of those three places I was at, like an hour later, like somebody actually hits my car, and it was a hit and run. So basically, somebody came into my life, made a mistake, and now I have to pay $500 to correct what they did. And it was so interesting because it was what I was talking about, but it hit me in like these other kind of ways. It hit me that people would do that anybody would do that, when in reality, I don't know why that would surprise me, but I'm Pisces and I can be really surprised by things like that. Somebody would actually leave and like put the bill on me. Like, that's crazy. Who would do that? Don't they know they're gonna mess with their future because they're inflicting harm like this? Like, that's what I would say. And what I want you to think about is there are basically, what this energy is really kind of talking about is areas that we are inflicting harm. And first, you have to understand that there's two different kinds of ways of inflicting harm. And one of them is because we're so wounded, and because we kind of aren't really functioning in our proper ways, we have like unconscious aspects of inflicting harm on others, but that's also, we're inflicting it on ourselves too. It's kind of like someone who wasn't loved is going to push people away. So these are kind of ways that we do inflict harm, but we are doing it unconsciously until we heal from it. But that's not the inflicting harm that this energy is talking about. This energy is talking about the harm that we inflict when we do and say things, when we feel like let down or hurt by another person, and how it makes us want to hurt them and makes us want to destroy them or makes us want to get even with them. Nobody's gonna fuck with me. That kind of energy we can have, like, oh, you've messed with the wrong person. I always say, like, whenever, or this hasn't happened in a while, but I used to say this and I thought it was kind of funny, but I used to say that, like, if I move someplace, the person that I'm going to have like this such an amazing instant connection with is going to be that same person who's the person who says, oh, I'm the last person you want to mess with. Like, that person is going to be my best friend, and we're going to totally fall in love, and then something's going to collapse around it. Or that was always a story I had in my life that I don't really recognize now, but I thought it was funny to say that. The person who's most like, no, you don't mess with me, I'm going to somehow mess with them in a way that they are going to be tested to want to get even and hurt me. And what I want you guys to understand, I'm making this all personal right now, but we all, and especially we've seen it over the past couple years, what I believe is one of the big aspects of life that we all have to come upon this gateway testing revolves around how we are when somebody hurts us, or we feel cheated by somebody, or we feel let down by somebody. How we handle that is a big part of how we're tested in life. And it's something where we are learning to realize that all these things are subjective, and all these things are all these things are like pointing to the wounded ways that we are and how we've responded in life. And therefore, now we feel empty or hurt, and we're now manifesting other people who show up in our lives. And then we have the choice of, are we going to try to hurt them because they hurt us? Or are we going to try to work through this and understand and complete the process of healing in realizing this person triggered all these things in you? What is there to heal and recognize and deal with, instead of just doing a hit and run? And the hit and run is where you feel shocked or flustered, or, oh, that person just got my goat. And then you go off and make it bigger by wanting to pull other people to your side, or wanting other people to feel the same way about that person, or things that, like I said, we've seen this so much in the past couple of years, where everybody's being tested in this way of, how do you handle that? Do you want to destroy another person? Do you want to destroy what they've built? Do you want to destroy what they could have in the future? Do you want them to be in pain? Do you want them to hurt? Because I feel that is the one emotion that keeps us in this depression. There's something about when we do these kind of things, it's harming our future forward in the way that a lot of our things can do. But it's different. Where I see it is, it's almost like putting these shields around us that does keep us prone to depression. It keeps us like down. There's something about us doing the hit and run in life that is depleting us. In the same way, I say, if you're having too much no strings attached sex, you start to have that same kind of thing. You lose this shine. You kind of you're very prone to depression. You're very, what you don't realize is you're giving up. You're basically keeping the doors open in winter, and now you can't get warm. And you can think, oh, let me do this. Let me light up the fireplace and get it going and get it all hot again. There we go. I got all hot again. But the doors are still open. So eventually that's just going to be going out. So when we do these things like wanting to get even or wanting to hurt people, we are adding so much trouble to our life. And what I believe is that this is like the greatest test of being human. I think the ultimate test that we have is, how do we handle when we feel cheated, or when we feel like we got the short end of the stick, or through whatever personal way we feel hurt by another? How do we handle that? One of the things, I was talking to my friend who has a Libra rising, and she was telling me how she's like, oh my gosh, if I have an argument with my partner, I will go to at least 4 or 5 friends by the end of the night, and we'll have talked to them about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I never do that. None of my friends hear any smack on anybody else in my life. I never talk about other friends. I just don't even go there, because I know how, like, if I have a problem, it's my problem. If I have a problem, I want to work it out with them, or now I have a therapist, so I would definitely take it there. But I don't want to share it in too many ways, because I don't want to taint other people to how they would then treat that person. I know I've been told all these things from people, and I can't forget it. So I'm kind of like, no, don't do that with me. Don't share that with me. I don't want to get in the middle. It's in the middle, basically. It's putting someone in the middle. But for the purposes of pulling people to your side, which is what we've seen for the past couple of years with everybody clashing with each other, feeling more powerful when you're like putting that other person down and feeling like you have all these people on your side. But what I'm telling you is that I've done research on this forever. And that's why I say in the readings last week, I talked about the 3 signs that I see as having the most challenging incarnation. And it's because one of the big reasons is because they can really get into that talking negatively or inflicting harm to others because they're hurt and because they want to process it with others. But because of that, they're actually keeping themselves in this sadness state. They're staying depressed. They're staying down, and they don't understand why. But it's because of this thing where we're not really allowed to deal with others that way. We're not to want to destroy them because they hurt us. It goes totally against what healing is about. It's about, you hurt me, now I want to understand why I have such a strong reaction from you. That's what we are wanting to start implementing into our challenges with others, and not to the point that we want to hurt them and see them suffer. the worst thing you can do to your future is to want to see another person suffer, or to want to destroy another person. So this energy is really kind of letting us know how we are doing things like a hit and run. And even like that person who did that with my car, you don't get away with that. You don't just, whatever. Even like there was somebody I was going to be working with, and there were these things, and so she didn't have insurance, and then she had a temporary tag from another state that had expired like 6 months earlier, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you're asking for so much trouble. This is like, oh, and I'm thinking about hiring this person, so I'm like, and then like, so we were outside, and then there was a big scrape on her car, and I was like, oh, it looks like somebody hit you, and it was because her partner was driving her car, and he hit another truck in the parking lot. And I was like, oh my God, and you just left. And she was like, well, it was an older vehicle. And I was like, oh my gosh, but that's like, you don't get away with that. I'm like, you don't just get to do that. That's something you're going to be held accountable for that. That's the kind of energy of a hit and run where you're inflicting harm. Same as me. I walked out of the store with a $500 bill from some other person. That's not something that just is whatever. Like those kind of things are not just whatever. That's inflicting harm. And that's the inflicting harm that we all have to be waking up to in ways that we need to be responsible for that. Even like wanting to understand why we have problems with certain people to the point we do want to hurt them or destroy them or plant seeds to get everybody else hating them. Why do we do that? And like going within ourselves to understand where this came from, feeling like you're not being seen or whatever. But these things are to wake up patterns that we're doing that are absolutely keeping us from really feeling the joy and magic that is available in life. So with this energy, be aware that things can come in kind of shocking, but there's so much depth to it. Even with me, with the thing with my car, I then cried over it. Which I was really surprised, but I cried that somebody would do that and just think whatever. And how we also don't know where people come from and how hard they've worked for things, and I've come from nothing. So finally having a mediocre, nice car is also, I'm like, every other car I had, I started with like 100,000 miles, so I'm like, I had all these emotions that came through me about how you just don't even care, and you come in and like hurt my car that I worked so hard for. And I've had other things where people have done that with my business, and I'm like, gosh, I worked so hard for this, and now you want to hurt. How hard, it's just, how can anybody do this? Then it even turned into, then I was like, I missed my dad, and I'm like, never going to see my dad again. And then it turned into, I was like, I want my dad. And then it turned into, I didn't even get my dad till I was 28 though. So my whole life I was missing my dad, So this whole process came about from someone just like hitting my car and running. And so it was really surprising like that, and then starting from also saying that it's never happened to me. And then an hour later, it does happen to me. So strange like that with life. But understand that too, so many of these things, there's so much depth and layers to what we're working on right now. And this is a big one. This is a big, big biggie. And I talked a little bit about it in the last video too, and how, I've seen people who have stayed in these revengeful anger, get you, I'll get even with you, and they never get anywhere in life. Look around. Even look at people that who have characteristics, or who do tend to want to plant negative seeds about others. Like, look at what kind of life they have, and look at the way you feel around their baseline energy. Is there a lot of joy there, or is there more sadness there? But I also like, what we have to understand is that we all do this because we're hurt. We all ultimately are doing this because we're wounded. And this getting even thing is just something that we have seen. It's been planted in us, this like me against you thing. But it's something that is, that can be changed from us. And even like when I was kind of talking over the energies in the way I do with how they come through, but I was like, but what am I supposed to tell them? You know, like, because if we're already in these spaces of being so jealous or envious or competitive or whatever with others so that we want to see them fail, how do we then get over feeling those things and correct the damage that we've already done in inflicting so much harm? Like that person who hit me, who now is making me have to come up with $500 to fix my car. How do we correct that? You know, how do we correct that when that energy has already gone out there? And it was really just what I was just shown is it's really just about acknowledging it and, you know, working from any point forward to make it right, in recognizing that we have to stay and fix and deal with these things that we have created, that we have messed up, that we have complicated, and most likely from others, you know, because others coming in our lives is what we always kind of say, well, they came in and messed it up, or they came in and complicated it for me. So it's about understanding how we can dance better with that so that we aren't, you know, dealing with others in ways so that it is always this kind of negative thing of like, you're winning and I'm not. Looking at people and seeing that, oh, you look so advantaged or you look so privileged and I am not. So I hate you and I want to ruin you and I want to destroy you. And that's in every single one of us. And it was programmed to be in every single one of us. So it's just something that at this time we're needing to wake up about and realize ultimately that it's keeping us from everything we really do want. And I've been saying it for years, but I just always have kind of noticed that what I start seeing around me is what I then kind of manifest. So it's best that I, you know, learn from it. Sorry, I was processing things. I was just like, okay, I see, okay. But, you know, realizing that, like, there's so much for us to see here, and it's really about humbling and being, you know, vulnerable and being open to see what you're needing to see. Because a lot of these things, too, and I talk about them in the readings, I actually did podcasts for each sign for this new moon. So you can find those on SoundCloud. But that am I about to lose this? What's going on? That there's things that have to be made with decisions that we're making in kind of bringing peace or bringing understanding or bringing another side to things, even much like seeing how we get past these things that we've kept hidden, that we haven't wanted to look at, that we've put in the closet or whatever, but now they're busting open and we have to deal with the kind of hidden things that we now are like, gosh, how I handled that was so wrong. It's just important that we are seeing that, you know, kind of like all of us have done this. It's important that we kind of soften with it like that, but it's important that we don't know. It's important that we understand the process of things. And just because somebody seems to have won doesn't mean it's going to be the same kind of win down the road, you know, and it's important that we recognize that the timing of things is aligning us to what we need to be in. And what we're seeing more often than not is just a representation. Here we go, I'm back. Of what we're being shown something that we are now going to manifest to, or that we are now going to have to confront to, or we are now going to have to deal with too. And something is keeping us from completing this healing process and evolving and becoming full of joy and true light from this hate and revenge and anger and get even and me against you. And the best example I have to share is so funny that I get to share it this way. I just remembered. So the best example to show you this is with Osho. Is that his name? Osho? And now I'm like, OSHA. No, Osho. Yeah, right? Osho, yeah. It's funny that I'm forgetting. I actually love his oracle cards. But anyway, he created everything from being an intellectual and reading a scholar and reading every single book out there. He really prided himself on he read everything out there. He then compiled all that information and put it out and created this movement. But then in the movie that you get to see about him, when his business partner screwed him over, he was so full of revenge. He visually was recorded showing himself wanting to destroy her. And I remember being like, dude, what are you doing? You're totally outing yourself. You're totally outing yourself that intellectualized wisdom is truly lofty. And until you're actually tested in life, we don't really know what we know. And most often we're failing. But I was like, dude, you're coming forward as like the most enlightened, and you just failed what I think is the biggest test that all of us humans have to face in what really does bring this true joy into our life. So when he showed that, I was like, oh my God, okay, I can't wait to share this with everybody, because now you get to know that this is the test. But that's the thing that's showing that intellectualizing things is not really, what we think it is. And that was the proof of it was right there. But recognizing that that's coming from you hurt me. And the feeling, processing the feeling should absolutely be something that should absolutely happen, because we're working to not want to revenge and to destroy others who have hurt us. But the whole point is, why did this hurt you so much? And then what kind of layers of healing, like I said with my car, then I was like out there crying over my dad dying, and then crying over never having a dad really. And then, and then all these kind of like, oh my, and then just the sadness for days over, like, and you hit my car. And I'm like, who cares really, really, but so in the healing process, when these hit and runs do come that also hit us, we have to really sit with the things that come out of us. But when it comes to that revenge and evil and hatred, we have to kind of work with it instead of like allowing the words to come out that allow this to be something so much where we are inflicting harm. We cannot inflict harm like that and think that we're going to get a win in life. That's what we're learning to not do. But like I said in the beginning, we're most likely inflicting harm because we've been wounded. So it's a complicated thing, which everything Scorpio is anyway. So it's to be understood that this time can be really kind of interesting for people and heavy and sad. And there's a lot of it too that can have you feeling really lethargic and like, what's the point? And there's just a lot in it that's in the mystery. There's a lot in it that why did this happen? Why am I having to face this? What does this mean? What should I do? Is there any hope? Can I really believe that we can change? There's definitely a lot of sad feelings that can be kind of taking over people. But, just realize that this is Scorpio, and what comes next is Sagittarius. So it's an awesome transition. It's an awesome transformation. It's always something that is going to be good. It's always something that's going to raise the bar for you. It's always going to be something that betters you. But we have to look at these things. We have to face these things. We have to really see how we do these things that we feel we can get away with, like a hit and run that we're like, nobody saw, let me get out of here. But in actuality, we're not separating from that. The same way with all of our sexual partners are staying with us. We don't actually get to separate from them. So facing these things is really just like committing to start cleaning them up now and to stay with the process so that you continue to support yourself in the healing journey and don't continue to like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Because once you do start facing things that you have in inflicting harm, coming from feeling hurt, life just kind of changes, because it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And what 2020 is really kind of bringing in a lot of ways, like that's where I already said last year that Dr. Sebi his movement would move forward in 2019, which there you go. I was completely right on there. And I also say for 2020 that majority of people are going to be going plant-based and really thinking in different ways of inflicting harm, because this movement and this new pattern that's changing in us and that ultimately changes everything is that when you become more conscious of how you are inflicting harm, how you can do something like doing this one thing that then, like, you know, has this other person paying a heavy price when you were just doing this thing from hurt or whatever. I mean, there's a million scenarios that you can imagine where you have now altered someone's course because of something you've done. But waking up to this really gets us in much more of a graceful walking of life. Like, what I can say now is, especially in this last year, I've manifested such different relationships, but I'm also now in therapy for the first time in my life where I am working with someone who's an authority, who's forcing me to look at these things, face these things, feel my way through these things, and, you know, better navigate my life. So we all have to recognize that that's the work we have to do. But what I can tell you is I have a completely transformed life in 1 year's time. Everyone I'm manifesting is different. All the kind of, even getting hit by a car was the strangest thing that's happened to me this whole year, but I've never been hit by a car, but still, it was just like, whoa, that's so weird, because everything is kind of in this other very mellow, very easy, no quarrels in any relationships, no miscommunications in any relationships. It's just been like, wow, this is really cool. But even like the more that I'm seeing it manifest, I'm paying even more attention to any opportunity to have any kind of miscommunication. Even like with this car, I mean, that's an example of why did this friction come into my life? Even though it really felt, you know, new moon and Scorpio related. And it was the best kind of hit you could have, best kind of position, you know, no cracks, no buckling, but still, but just kind of, you know, be easy on yourself as we're learning this stuff, because there's a lot, you know, that's coming apart, that's revealing itself, that's showing up. But all these kind of painful places that you're having to go into are really ready to reboot into a new pattern where you're not dealing in those same ways, where you can now see how much I've changed over the year from this new kind of like working with a therapist and just keeping it more real with looking at what I'm manifesting instead of seeing it as their problem or something with them. Really bringing it much more to, you know, why did I manifest them, and how does it relate to something broken and shattered inside of me that's now bringing them into my life for them to hurt me in ways that then, yes, show me I have this wound and I have this thing I have to face. So, you know, again, I'm like complex. Everything I'm seeing as I look at this is just this string leads to that string, but that string leads to 3 strings. And then those strings open this other thing that leads to joy. You know, so it's like, okay, navigating this is pretty complex and unusual, but as long as you remain humble and wanting to heal and wanting to see what you need to see and wanting to acknowledge what you need to acknowledge, and in facing that we have to face this stuff. We can't hide from these ways that, one, we don't want to see these things, but hiding in these ways that are actually hurting us, because how we're handling them is kind of how here's something that I just thought. I had this thought of how one of the things I talk about after I lost Moon Bear was that when I went through the anger stage, which was a long time of it, and the anger part of healing and grief was a long one with me. But I remember that when all the relationships I was having were turning me into a rabid dog. Like everybody was having me be such a bad dog. You know, like everything was making me like turn crazy. And I realized it was just because of that space I was in and what I was healing, but it wasn't correct for me to be in all these relationships because like things were so broken inside of me that then I was just manifesting people to give me more reasons to show myself in a dog who's losing it kind of manner, you know. But I can humbly look at that now, you know, and that's what's really been changing my life is I can humbly look at these things and recognize where they came from, why I acted that way, but also in recognizing that a lot of things that I'm running from because I can't deal with them are just making them worse. So that's a big Pisces trait that we all have. We think we're pulling back to process, but then it kind of makes things worse. So even like that, you know, you can be having things come to you where you are having to, you know, realize that there's some mode of responsibility that you need to take to correct this and make this thing better. Okay, but you know what? We're going to stop because I see that we're almost at 30 minutes, and hopefully that was okay. I forget everything that I say after I say it, so the ending is, there's no way I can sum up the reading at the ending. So I'm like, I hope something came out there. Okay, but anyway, my loves, it's been fun. So yeah, the New Moon podcasts, maybe I'll put the information down below so that you can go access those. And I'm actually going to be having monthly videos rolling out in a few days that are exclusive and private. But I'm excited to be going even deeper into doing some kind of life coaching work, individual, with a smaller group of people, which I'm excited about. So that's coming out soon. But okay, anyway, I'm going to get on with my day. It's been fun, and I will see you soon. Okay.